28th Velocity Pitch Competition. My name is Tina Wilton, and I'm the Entrepreneurship Experience Manager at Velocity, as well as your MC this afternoon. We're excited for you to hear from our top 8 student teams as they pitch their business ideas in the hopes of winning $5,000. Before we begin, the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to the 6 nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. Velocity was founded 15 years ago to help UW students explore entrepreneurship and develop the skills to solve big problems. We've come a long way since 2008 as a humble residence incubator, and over that time, Velocity founders have started over 400 companies, which have created over 5,000 jobs and generated $26 billion in enterprise value. More to that point, their impact has translated to hundreds of patients with improved medical outcomes, thousands of kilograms of crops grown on both land and sea, tens of thousands of students from developing countries able to access better education, and hundreds of thousands of hours saved in business productivity. Many of the founders responsible for these amazing outcomes started right here at the Velocity Pitch Competition. It's been our privilege to accelerate the founder journey for the past 15 years, and we are looking forward to the next 15. This term, we had over 109 applicants covering a range of ideas across all 6 University of Waterloo faculties. Our reviewers narrowed the field to the 24 semi-finalists who pitched 2 weeks ago, and today the top 8 teams from that group will be competing for one of 4 $5,000 prizes. Each team will have 3 minutes to pitch their business idea, followed by 3 minutes of Q&A with the judges. Speaking of the judges, let's introduce them now. Dr. Rebecca Allen is a senior analyst at Box One Ventures. Rebecca holds a master's in chemistry from Cardiff University and a PhD in chemistry from the University of Toronto, with a specialization in small molecule therapeutics and rare diseases. Her passion for entrepreneurship, combined with her expertise in medicinal chemistry, allow her to support and evaluate companies from deep tech to drug discovery and everything in between. During her studies, Rebecca was an Amplitude Ventures Fellow, FRV Ontario Investment Associate, and independent consultant for multiple drug discovery startups. In her spare time, she enjoys skiing, sailing, and exploring independent coffee shops. Welcome, Rebecca. Amr Abdelgawad is the Chief Operating Officer and one of Fluid AI's co-founders. Amr has a Bachelor's of Applied Science degree in Nanotechnology, Engineering, and a Master's of Business Entrepreneurship and Technology from the University of Waterloo. Over the years, Amr has been able to develop his business acumen through the Masters of Business Entrepreneurship and Technology program at the University of Waterloo, and by leading operations, finance, and commercial activities at Fluid AI. Amr is also the 2016 Ontario Student Entrepreneur of the Year, the 2016 runner-up Canada Student Entrepreneur of the Year, the 2017 Canada Student Entrepreneur of the Year, and a 2017 TEDx UW speaker. Welcome, Amr. Anthony Lau is a 4th-year accounting and financial management student at the University of Waterloo. He has a strong passion for entrepreneurship and venture capital. He is currently an associate at the Student Venture Fund and was previously the co-president of the Entrepreneurship Society. His previous internship was at KPMG Assurance. Welcome, Anthony. And our final judge is you. Here in the audience, you will get your say in the Velocity's People's Choice Award for $500. Details will be provided after the final pitch. Thank you again to all of our judges for lending us their time and expertise this afternoon. All right, now we're going to get started. I'd like to start with Patient Companion, a software application that improves communication between patients and nurses, allowing patients to specify their requests and nurses to prioritize alerts based on priority and departmental preferences. Pitching on behalf of Patient Companion is Christy Lee, a biomedical engineering undergraduate student in the Faculty of Engineering. Christy is also involved with Velocity's Cornerstone program, United College Greenhouse, and the Conrad School of Entrepreneurship and Business. Welcome to the stage, Christy.
When I was volunteering at a hospital and a long-term care center for 2 years, I saw the constant number of lights flashing across the hallway. With the current nurse call system, the nurses do not know what types of requests the patients are making and which patients need their immediate help. This is where Patient Companion comes in, a communication app between patients and nurses. A nurse is typically assigned to 5 to 6 patients, sometimes up to 9 patients. Now, imagine each patient pressing on this red button whether they want a cup of water or are in pain. In fact, 6 out of 10 requests are non-urgent requests, which results in alert fatigue for nurses. As a result, a nurse takes around 20 to 25 minutes to assist a patient, and 15% of the requests are often ignored or forgotten. With Patient Companion, nurses no longer have to worry about forgetting which patients need their immediate attention. The patients can specify the request, and the requests are automatically prioritized on the nurse's end. Non-nursing tasks such as water or blankets are distributed to personal support workers and volunteers, reducing the workload for the nurses. As a result, with Patient Companion, this will save 2.4 hours of nurses' time per shift. After speaking with nurses and directors of hospitals, we finalized a revenue model of $158 per bed per month. Realistically, we'll be able to implement our solution in 1,000 beds out of the 3.5 million beds in North America by the end of next year, which will result in $1.8 million in revenue. Unlike our legacy competitors, Patient Companion allows the requests to be automatically prioritized and distributed, reducing stress and workload for the nurses. We've spoken with 45 nurses and 15 patients across Canada and US, and we're currently finalizing pilots with the Directors of Digital Health, Innovation Specialists, VP of Infrastructure, and CIOs from 4 hospitals and 1 long-term care. Following our market strategy, we will be able to implement our solution in more than 500 beds by the end of April next year through our 5 pilots. And the $5,000 will help us to scale our infrastructure to accommodate for more pilots. Our team and advisors are equipped with the knowledge and experience in launching a health tech solution in hospitals and long-term care centers. Come join us in supporting the nurses to seamlessly communicate with patients using Patient Companion. Thank you.
Great talk. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I was just wondering, can nurses prioritize alerts depending on like the departmental preferences?
Yeah, so that's one of the huge benefits to our Patient Companion is that the nurses are able to prioritize and customize the types of requests per departmental needs.
Your revenue model that you presented seems very oddly specific. Can you walk us through your logic and how you ended up arriving to such a number?
Yeah, so we don't have direct competitors. However, digital solutions like EHR or EMR, there's ranged of $70 to $300 per user per month for a typical hospital to purchase. So we are in that midpoint of $158, and this number was able to get derived by our value proposition, which is saving 2.4 hours of nurses' time per shift. So if we convert that into nurses' salary, that's about $780 per hour. So we will per bed per month. So we'll be actually be saving roughly $200 for the hospitals, and this is a realistic number for the hospital to spend per bed per month.
I think you mentioned that there's some early adopters, and I was just wondering what customer feedback you've received and how you've acted on them so far.
Yeah, so our early adopters, they were all very interested in taking our solution. Essentially, they gave the feedback of being able to customize a lot of the settings, hence where we are customizing the departmental needs and things like that. They're all on board in having our solution implemented, and a lot of these key stakeholders, they were actually talking about improving their current nurse call system even before I reached out to them. So it was the perfect timing for me to reach out to them and show us our solution to them.
I'm curious, like, how you're ensuring a seamless integration process with the current kind of EMR systems or kind of other apps that they're currently using kind of in these wards.
Yeah, because the solutions that the hospitals are currently using are all software-based, they have an APIs that we can just easily use and integrate with our current solution. And the hospitals agreed to this in terms of integrating with the current solution, and we'll be able to integrate with the actual current nurse call system and be able to use the light or the desktop solutions that the nurses have. So it'll be a very seamless connection, and the nurses would not need additional training to use our solution.
I don't think we have enough time for another question, but maybe just one piece of quick feedback. You'd be surprised how long it sometimes can take to integrate new software solutions within hospitals, so just keep that in mind.
Yep, for sure. Thank you.
I've been playing cricket since the age of 5. I've hosted numerous cricket tournaments across East Africa, Pakistan, and now in Canada. I've grown a lot of love for the sport, and now I'm studying recreation and sports business, which has helped me identify a major problem with the sport. Cricket being primarily an outdoor sport leaves very little formal opportunities to be played indoors, especially in the winters. Like there is futsal for soccer, there's no real equivalent for cricket. Having spoken to the city of Kitchener, we've seen a massive increase in the demand for outdoor cricket facilities, which the city cannot meet. And they're looking for solutions such as taking the sport indoors. Let me give you a bit of context here. Globally, cricket is the second most popular sport. And in Canada, it's the fastest growing sport, with over 5 million fans. 40% of these fans play the sport. So what's the solution to this massive issue? Bat ball, a formal and more convenient way to play cricket indoors. Like there is pickleball for tennis and futsal for soccer, bat ball is that for cricket. Currently, bat ball is played in 2 divisions, recreationally and competitively. The compete side focuses on formalizing and professionalizing the sport through leagues, matches, and tournaments, which are all overseen and regulated by our umbrella organization, Bat Ball Association. The recreation side focuses on accessibility and convenience through drop-in and pick-up style games. Players can simply sign up on our website to play a session. On our website, we've also registered more than 50 people, having launched only 2 weeks ago. We've also hosted 6 matches across 2 locations and have generated $500 in revenue in the past 2 months. Currently, we've implemented a pay-to-play model in which we charge $15 to $20 per session. But like many big sports, we've come up with strategies to take on the following revenue streams: strategic sponsorships and partnerships, and taking control of all bat-ball merchandise and equipment. So having spoken to the city of Kitchener, we're devising a plan in which we want to roll out bat-ball into recreation and community centers starting 2024. We also want to work with university clubs to expand the reach of the sport. More matches will help us create a bigger bat-ball network and take us to our long-term goal of having bat-ball in the Olympics. Why 5K? We want to buy the initial equipment with that amount. We also want to book facilities in bulk so we can lower our costs by 20 to 30%. We want to integrate recreational league software onto our platform so we can have team rankings, player profiles, and utilize player data effectively. So, are you ready to make bat-ball the next biggest indoor sport? Thank you.
So what makes bat-ball very unique? What prevents others from coming in and trying to implement what you are working on right now?
So our biggest asset is the databases we've created. So apart from the rules that are different from cricket as well, and it being a sport on its own, we've created databases and targeting our customer pain points, which are booking facilities to play the sport, getting access to sponsors, and obviously the equipment costs. So these are major issues that our customers are facing, and we're taking all of this on. We have a system in place in which we can simply give them access to all of these things.
Thank you.
Great pitch. What strategies are in place to make this sport accessible to a diverse range of participants?
Yeah, so one of the customer segments that I've identified that are heavily underserved in sports are women, and especially mothers. So we're speaking to one entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur, who has this app in which she's targeting women to play sports that are not usually perceived or are accessible to them. So that's one way we're trying to access and target those different customer segments. We're also implementing it into university clubs, so that's just giving us access to a whole set of audiences who have never tried the sport out. Again, recreation and community centers are great places for people to try out the sport, so opening it up to different audiences again.
You mentioned that each session is $15 to $20. And you're going to be providing the venue and the equipment. Can you walk us through the profitability and the economics behind this?
Yeah. So before I break that down, I do think that a lot of the profitability will come from the later revenue streams that I mentioned. And but regardless, so let's go back here. So currently, if a player is paying $15 to $20 per session, that's a 2-hour slot we're booking. So we're going to book the facility from that money, and it would usually cost us around $200 to book that. The equipment cost comes to around, if we're able to buy it in bulk and have the equipment ready, then it will come to around $5 to $10.
So what could be next for you after cricket? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so one of the goals that I started off with was expanding it to the North American audience that hasn't been so engaged with the sport cricket. And one of the ways we're doing this is by integrating baseball and cricket together. So mixing and matching the rules and seeing how we can target that customer segment. So that's baseball enthusiasts and fans, and how we can get them to try the sport on making cricket simpler and integrating the baseball rules in it and the style of play.
Thank you. Great pitch.
Thank you.
Mapmate is a platform that connects food processors to small farmers and provides analytics for sustainable farming operations and traceability for the supply chain in Africa. Pitching on behalf of Mapmate is Kweku Chum, a PhD student in Sustainability Management from the Faculty of Environment.
Hi. Today, I want to tell you the exciting journey of Mapmate. We enable food manufacturing companies to connect directly to small farmers in Africa. Have you wondered where the ketchup that you eat ends up on your table? Well, it normally comes from food manufacturing companies, and they process this food. However, they have always faced with a lot of challenges with regards to sourcing where these products are coming from. Why? Because in my part of the, for example, where I'm coming from in Africa, about 70% of this raw material supply is provided by small farmers. These farmers engage or are faced with a lot of challenges, ranging from pest and disease attacks on their farm, to logistics challenges, to even drought and climate variabilities. This makes them exhibit or adopt very unethical practices or ways of farming, like bush burning, application of chemicals on the farm, and even sometimes to the extent of using kits because of their high production cost and limited living income. These challenges are normally a headache for food manufacturing companies because, number one, they find it difficult to trace the operations of these farmers, they find it difficult to reliably source from them, and even sometimes lose consumer trust and meet international compliance. Having worked within the food company or the food manufacturing company, at the same time working with farmers in communities, I developed Mapmate. Mapmate is the solution that helps bridge this gap of combining or connecting farmers directly to stakeholders or food manufacturing companies. Through the system, farmers are profiled, their operations are being tracked, and they're able to also build credibility and have access to resources to empower them and be sustainable in their farming practices. Currently, we've onboarded 750 of them, and we hope by 2024, increase it to 2,500. We have onboarded 2 farmers and raised a revenue of $5,000, and even signed up a deal with another customer of 6 months to even increase the price because of additional features that they've expressed interest in. Our pricing is SaaS-based, and we have a lot of partners. The market size and scalability of this platform is enormous. Currently, in Ghana alone, the market size is about 750 million, and we expect that as we grow within the areas of cocoa, coffee, cashew, vegetables, and etc., we can even grow and scale up to Africa and even to the global community where small farmers are also increasing. The food manufacturing companies have a track record of higher market share, and so we believe that through this platform, we can make farming sustainable and empower food manufacturers to be more sustainable in their operations. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the team? What makes you the right team to solve this problem?
Thank you. So growing up from a very remote area where my mom was actually a food trader, and also having experience in manufacturing companies, I have 5 years experience working in the cocoa beverage industry. It has not only given me the passion, but also the enthusiasm to see the gap and then see how to bring solutions to it. Currently, my team and I have volunteers on the ground that we are always engaging farmers to empower them, to understand from them what these challenges that they're facing are. And so that gives us that leverage to understand the ground better, and at the same time also help these channel the information to the food manufacturers for them to understand the actual issues on the ground and see how best they can connect to them and build credibility and source responsibly from them. So that's what makes us competitive than other companies in Africa.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, what data does the farmer need to feed into the system, and what upfront investment do they need to make in order for them to be realistic to use the
All right. Thank you so much for the question. Mm-hmm. Farmers actually don't pay for anything, but then they are able to use the platform to build profiles. So basically, the platform helps them to Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. So the system helps these farmers to build profiles, and these profiles, normally their name and then their yield and other information. This information is what these farmers provide, and it helps to track to these food manufacturing companies, because it becomes a background for them to understand the operations at the last mile. Because most of the time, these food manufacturing companies operate at a high level, and they don't understand what is happening on the ground. So these farmers get the opportunity to be onboarded and then profiled on the system, including their sales, the amount of pesticide, what kind of organic materials or pesticides that they are using, what kind of, basically everything about their farm operations and their farm profile. And then this helps as an information to leverage on for the food manufacturers to provide information and resources to empower them to see how best they can then be responsible in their farm.
Great pitch. One really quick question, because we don't have long. Are there any partnerships that you can put in place with organizations or government agencies to enhance Mapmate's impact in these areas?
You mean the partnerships?
Yeah, any partnerships with like government
Yes.
organizations that can help you like enroll your...
Yeah, so currently we have about 5 partners. Some of them are private companies, where MTN is one of the partners who is a finance company that helps to transact. We use that API to help connect transactions, so the farmers are able to be paid directly through the system through an API call. So that's one of our partners. In terms of government agencies, we've also partnered with some municipal assemblies in Africa for them to be part of this. So during the engagement with the stakeholders, we actually have had an opportunity to speak with the municipality reps and some government officials during that stage to just understand how the processes are. And that helped us to even get that credibility to work with our customers.
Our next team is creating a software product that submits taxes for construction companies with contract payments. Here is Due Tax, led by Justin Due, an undergraduate management engineering student in the Faculty of Engineering.
Due Tax. Ooh. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin, and I am the founder of Due Tax. So here's the current situation. Construction companies with contract payments lack the tools to submit their taxes effectively and at a low cost. So I developed Due Tax. Due Tax is an end-to-end software solution that submits taxes for construction contract companies. Due Tax has 3 main value propositions. The first being that it is a customized system integration designed specifically to meet industry needs. Currently, mid and small-sized construction companies are still manually submitting their tax slips. And as a result, they're incurring late fees from the CRA every single year. Due Tax eliminates the need for manual data entry. Last but not least, certain construction companies opt to hire tax consultants come tax season. However, this is often a costly option to submit and verify that your taxes are done correctly. Due Tax takes your data, transforms it, and verifies it using the same CRA regulatory checkers, and then submits it to the CRA. So, as of September, I've completed my first pilot phase with a construction company, and Due Tax has filed $250 million worth of expenses for this company. I noticed that this company had 2 main problems: time and resource misallocation. They were collecting data for 500 different subcontract companies that they had worked with. Then they had to fill in 2,000 unique tax slips without making any errors. After I brought on Due Tax, this completely eliminated that process of manual filing. I saved them the $20,000 that they would incur every single year in late fees. And 150 accounting hours that they could better use elsewhere. So now that I've completed my pilot phase, and I've successfully submitted these taxes to the CRA without being audited, I have a verbal agreement to come back to this company the following year and use this paid software again. Now, I have two other goals for the upcoming tax season. The first is to push and market this product to as many construction contract companies as I can. And the second, to expand the product to similar markets. For example, the IRS, which is a far larger market, and I found out has a very similar tax submission process for construction contract companies. Now, a little bit about myself. I have previously worked at major construction companies. I've experience in tax, finance, as well as software development. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my pitch and join me in bringing due tax to every construction contract company within Canada.
Great pitch. I was just wondering if you have any advisors or anybody on your team who has like legal expertise and kind of understanding of how some of the industry kind of requirements for tax kind of change over time.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't have anybody on my team that has the legal expertise. However, I have worked closely with both CRA agents as well as CPAs and professionals in order to make sure that everything I do is within the requirements. Thank you.
I was just wondering, is there a specific reason why you chose to focus on the field of construction, and how does this compare to other corporate tax filing softwares?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason that I chose to focus on construction contract companies is because while I was working at a major construction company, I realized that these other accounting teams all had this similar problem. So that's why I chose to tackle that. Now, for the second part of your question, generic software like, for example, QuickBooks, right? They don't have the exact tools necessary to fit these construction companies' needs. For example, there's a slip called the T5018. So essentially what that does is it collects data from all of the subcontracted companies, and then they have to collaborate with every single one of them to make sure that they have the same numbers on their end as well as the other company's end. So this is a bit too complicated for the other softwares and thus is not included.
Thanks for the presentation. Why do you think this hasn't been solved before? It seems like a problem and a pain point for a lot of construction companies at this stage.
Yeah, the reason I think it hasn't been solved before is because there are certain easier options, as I mentioned, such as hiring tax accountants, but some people don't prefer that option. Actually, the last year, CRA released a new method to submit your taxes for construction contract companies, which allows you to build your own internal tools far more efficiently than it has before. So that just kind of created an opening for people to be the first to build those for very specific use cases. So that's kind of my answer to that. Ooh.
I was wondering what security measures you have in place for sensitive financial information and tax-related data.
Yeah, absolutely. So as of the MVP, I'm going to the company directly, and I'm using their system in order to work on their data, so it's not going anywhere externally. But moving forward, I would like to move, for example, to an AWS cloud or something with a lot of data security. I haven't looked too much into that, but that's one of the next steps.
Our final team before a short intermission is Blackbird, a rapid web-based flood mapping solution. Blackbird will be represented by Robert Chlumsky, a PhD student in civil and environmental engineering, and is involved in Velocity's Cornerstone program.
Thank you. So my name is Robert, and I'm here to talk to you today about Blackbird and flooding. So there we go. So unfortunately, scenes like this of flooding are becoming more and more frequent around the world. due to a combination of both land use change and climate change exacerbating intense flood events. In Canada alone, we experience between $4 and $7 billion in flooding annually, in flooding damages, I should say, annually. And it's not hard to see why when single events like the BC flooding that occurred in 2021 was estimated to cause about $5 billion in damages just on its own. So part of the problem I'm going to show to you by putting you in the hot seat of a flood forecaster. This is the person whose job it is to actually predict these floods. The information they get is some sort of a weather forecast. They maybe have some notes based on their experience or the previous engineer's experience related to flooding. They may or may not have a series of regulatory flood maps, and I say may or may not because in some cases in Canada, these maps simply don't exist yet, and in some cases, these maps, if they do exist, may be decades out of date. And with this information, the flood forecaster has to somehow make a prediction. Is there going to be some water on the road, or do we need to issue evacuation orders for this town? What we're offering with Blackbird is the first engineering-based solution to allow for real-time flood mapping at scale. So part of the problem that we experience is a technological one because we have certain methods in hydraulic modeling and mapping that exist. They range from sort of fast and low accuracy methods to slow but high accuracy methods. And for various reasons, none of these are actually very well suited towards real-time flood prediction. What we're doing with Blackbird is combining some of these existing methods to create a method that is basically maintaining speed and accuracy, which allows it to be applied both in real time and over large spatial domains. In terms of our business model, we're offering sort of two options depending on the needs of the client. We can produce annual flood maps that are updated every year based on the available information, and this is a tier that's sort of suitable for insurance companies and clients like that. On the other hand, we can also offer live forecasting and provide those predictions to clients, and that's more of interest to the engineering folks. In terms of market size, just staying within North America here, there's estimated $60 billion in damages annually, so this is a big problem that people have invested interest in figuring out. Between flood mapping and flood forecasting over the next 10 years, this could be $100 billion plus market, and even something as simple as providing flood risk reports to clients that are looking to purchase a home potentially, even that could be a $700 million per year market. In terms of traction, we've received some funding already through Upstart. We've completed the Cornerstone program over this past summer. We've put out our first live demo. We've hired our first co-op student. And in the coming year, we're hoping to basically progress with our live demo to take it to version 2 for clients. And we've also submitted on a $200,000 pilot with the government of Yukon to basically create a series of flood maps with Blackbird for them, which will hopefully happen in the coming year. In terms of our team, I've worked as an engineer on flood projects. I have now almost 10 years of experience in water resources, and our team also includes 2 University of Waterloo professors with, between them, lots of experience in sort of large-scale coding projects and numerical modeling and things like that. In terms of the use of the 5K, we basically plan to use this money towards further development of our interface to make this product accessible to clients. So with that, thank you very much. Please join me in helping to solve flooding, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the validation that you've done to ensure, once again, that no liability goes back to you in case there are incorrect readings or you pass along any incorrect information?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So part of what we're doing is providing this information to flood forecasters in this case, if we're focusing on that segment. And it's ultimately the job of the forecasters to interpret the results. And under the way that regulatory frameworks work, it's basically their mandate to put these warnings out based on the data we provide them. So in that sense, we're a little bit at arm's length from interpretation and issuing of evacuation orders and things like that.
So you've tested the system just in simulated environments at this point?
So in this case, because this is kind of a deep tech problem, it's still undergoing validation. So in terms of accuracy of results, I'm basically doing this as part of my PhD to really benchmark things against existing methods, make sure it works, test it against historic flood events. So that process is underway right now, but that's all part of the testing that will be happening.
Okay, thank you.
Can you touch a bit on who your target customer would be and your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, definitely. So the current, just based on my experience as an engineer and having the contacts that I have, right now we're focusing more so on the live forecasting and working with sort of provincial bodies whose mandate is to provide these flood forecasts. So we're basically touching base with our existing relationships and trying to sell to them first. The next kind of big tier would be the insurance industry because they have a vested interest to make sure they can charge the right amounts to cover flood losses, and they're more interested in the annual flood map, so that would be kind of the second very large customer segment that we would be targeting.
Great pitch. I was just wondering about kind of the computing infrastructure. It seems like this is probably a lot of like calculations on your end that are being done to kind of predict all of these models. And do you have that infrastructure in place or kind of access to kind of what you need for that? And then also kind of on that topic, can it also handle doing the calculations for like simultaneous events or kind of running multiple models at the same time?
Mm-hmm. So part of the beauty of this and the technological limitation to date has been that the existing models tend to be very slow, and our model, based on the way it's developed, is designed to be fast and applicable at large scale. So the computing power is basically not as intense as it would be for other models. A lot of the processing can also be pre-processed, so the actual computation is fast, and we sort of pre-process a lot of the heavy lifting. In terms of the infrastructure, it's important, especially in forecasting, to make sure we have redundant systems and things like that. So part of the money that we're planning on generating through the revenue would be to purchase these systems and get them running. We do have current computing powers to run the models and do that kind of stuff, but it would be certainly an extra level to have the redundancy needed to run these models live.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next term, Velocity has another full slate of programming on campus, including Foundations, Cornerstone, and our digital and science spaces. We also have a campus ambassador program that is made up of an amazing community of volunteers who help make our events a success. Feel free to learn about all of these programs on the QR code that's up on the screen here. And we're now going to take a brief intermission. Please help yourself to some sandwiches and refreshments and be back here at 1:10 to hear the next group of pitches. Thank you. Going to get started. We're going to kick things off with Plantel. They are creating a novel metamaterial spinal implants to provide more natural-like movement in artificial disc replacement. Here to pitch for Plantel is co-founder Jonah Leinwand, undergraduate biomedical engineering student from the Faculty of Engineering. Jonah takes part in Velocity's Cornerstone program. Welcome Jonah to the stage.
I'd like everybody in the room here to tilt their neck all the way down, then all the way up, and twist it side to side. These are just some of the many complex movements that occur in the cervical spine in your neck. Now, spinal disorders are the #1 global cause of years lived with disability, and one of the major surgeries to address spinal issues is artificial disc replacement. This is when an artificial disc is inserted in the spine after the diseased disc is removed. Now, despite the promise of regaining that motion in your neck, reoperation rates can range as high as 20% for the surgery, leaving a burden of $28,000 per revision on either the healthcare system or an individual patient. Our solution is Plantel, compliant, metal, additively manufactured flexures that provide support, flexibility, and structure under spinal loading conditions. We have 3 key advantages to our design over existing disc replacements. Firstly, we have a device that is specifically designed for additive manufacturing or 3D printing. This means we can make it more efficiently and waste less material. Secondly, our device is customizable. We have the ability to change the position, thickness, and orientation of our flexures, all protected in our provisional patent filed earlier this year, in order to tailor a design for a specific patient anatomy. Lastly, unlike on-market disc replacements, our device is compliant. That means it's only one piece. We bend and flex with the design itself. There are no surfaces rubbing against each other, which can lead to particles being sent throughout the bloodstream, a common issue in orthopedic implants. Now, the market for disc replacement is huge at around $500 million in North America alone. Typically, hospitals will purchase these implants for anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 for one device. And this market is growing rapidly for 3 key reasons. Firstly, there's a growing body of clinical evidence supporting disc replacement as a valid surgery, meaning surgeons are more likely to want to do it. Secondly, government and insurance agencies have been adopting new reimbursement policies to make it more financially viable to proceed with disc replacement. Lastly, with an increasingly aging population, particularly here in Canada, there is a demand for innovation in this space. Our team consists of myself, a biomedical engineering student, and Professor Stuart McLaughlin in the mechanical engineering department. This has been a passion project of ours with over 2 years of full-time and part-time work on this project. We also have 2 surgical collaborators, one of whom is the former president of the Canadian Spine Society, and close ties with MSAM, the additive manufacturing group based here at the university. We've had a great past 12 months, mostly linked to receiving funding, but what I'm most proud of is having attended the Canadian Spine Society conference in February of this year. I was able to interface with over 20 surgeons about our design and get their feedback. The 2 collaborators we brought on board actually came as a result of those conversations. Our next steps, of course, are further testing and filing our full patent in early 2024. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you help us understand a little bit more the healthcare economics and how you're going to bring down the cost of reoperation at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big issue that we're trying to address is those revision surgeries. And the reason why those happen are often linked with the design of the implant. So 2 main causes. Firstly, there's something called biomimeticity, which is how like the natural structure an artificial one is. So these kind of ball and socket designs that you saw in the previous example, they're not biomimetic. They just kind of roll. And that means that at that segment, you may be okay. But let's say your vertebrae, one higher or one lower, you may be having unnatural loading, meaning you're going to have a higher risk of surgery at those places. Our device, because of the compliant mechanism that we have in place, is hoping to emulate more realistic biomechanical loading and address lower revision surgeries.
Thank you.
Great talk. Have you done any in vivo testing yet? What stage are you at, kind of along the whole pipeline?
Yeah, so we haven't done in vivo testing yet. That's the next step that we're kind of gearing up to do. Basically, the long-term horizon here, we have many different routes this could go, but it's at least 2 years away from kind of seeing any profitability, and the in vivo study that we're planning is most likely going to be starting early 2024.
And you've got a partner for the in vivo study?
So the lab that I work with, Professor McLaughlin, they have close ties with surgeons at Western's Medical Clinic, and so we're hoping to leverage that relationship in helping with the clinical study.
Great, thanks.
Just want to know more about what steps have you been taken to validate the function of the disc and how much it's better than the existing solutions, and will the team be taking charge of the upcoming tests, studies, and approval, or would that be outsourced?
Okay, so I think first part of the question, what have we done so far? We've done mechanical testing on a device called the Vivo AMTI, basically a 6 degree of freedom mechanical testing machine. With that, there are open source data, kind of databases online that characterize mechanical loading in the spine. We take those numbers, we run them on the machine, and then we see how our device behaves and responds. And the results are indicative of a compliant mechanism. What the next step is going to be is that cadaveric study, like we're discussing, and that I will be a part of as well. So most likely this project continues in the form of a master's study that will be on the same topic, focusing on disc replacement, compliant mechanisms, everything that we're all really interested in, just continuing in that academic stream alongside the company venture.
Maybe one quick question. Have you done any preliminary investigation in what the regulatory pathway would look like?
Oh, absolutely. More than preliminary. Our degree really prepares us for that. So it's a very long process, and disc replacement's a class 3 medical device. So of course, this is something that would be many years away from ever being inside a real person. But we're taking the steps to follow it. You start with the cadaveric study, then you have the FDA approval meetings, and there's a number of other founders who I've spoken to in orthopedics, especially from Waterloo, who we have kind of a clear roadmap that we're hoping to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Plantel Support. Plantel Support offers innovative and customizable solutions to make indoor plant care simple for plant parents. Please welcome Plantel Support founder Doris Yee, an undergraduate student studying applied mathematics who is a part of Velocity Science, Cornerstone, and Conrad School of Entrepreneurship and Business.
There's something you should know about me. I'm a former houseplant serial killer. Hi, my name is Doris, and this is Plantel Support. And support is needed for this $20 billion industry. 70% of houseplants die due to lack of proper care, such as inadequate indoor environment and taxing maintenance. These leads to a $14 billion waste every year. Yet we continue to decorate with these indoor houseplants that's originated from tropical rainforests. However, these gorgeous plants have needs. High humidity, ventilation, and varied degree of lighting all contribute to their health. Our mission is to recreate this indoor. Currently on the market, we have ugly grow tents that are often called an eyesore and not something you want in your living room. Meet our gorgeous greenhouse cabinet. We have developed a modular and customizable solution to mimic the natural habitat of these plants. Our solution includes everything that you would create a good environment for your plants inserted in a IKEA greenhouse cabinet. Since launch, we have sold thousands of products, and our customers are raving, saying wonderful things like next level and top notch. Our company was founded in September of 2022. Within 6 months, we reached steady profits through B2C e-commerce. A year later, we were able to establish B2B2C collaboration, and currently we are scaling through online platforms such as Amazon. Our next innovation is an IoT smart device powered by advanced robotics and sensors to further automate plant care. This is also designed to integrate seamlessly into our existing system. We have hundreds of customers across US, Canada, and Europe. With twice the industry average conversion rate, we are reaching 100K by the end of this year. We are after a 2.5 billion global market focused on the 92 million US household. Our average order is $150. Plantel support is a one-girl show, but we owe our success to the numerous incubators and the support from our mentors from different fields. We would like to attribute 80% of the 5K for scaling production to meet the increasing demand and 20% for administration cost. Plantel support, optimal plant care made simple. Thank you.
Great talk. I was just wondering whether you've understood yet which of your different sales strategies is most effective, kind of which ones you'll be prioritizing moving forward, whether it's kind of physical stores, these partnerships with other suppliers, or Amazon. Like, have you got an idea for which one's most successful yet?
Currently, our most successful was the e-commerce, which is directly to customer. I think that has a big factor being I have been doing that from the beginning, but we do want to pivot into Amazon because that can help me eliminate a lot of the time-consuming labor such as fulfillment.
I just have a question about production. How is the product being produced right now, and how do you go about scaling your business going forward?
Well, at the very beginning, we had very limited funding, so I was the one designing and manufacturing everything myself. Luckily, we were able to scale and outsource the production earlier this year. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
First of all, hats off for doing all of this by yourself. This is fantastic. Can you just please explain to us where are you in terms of your progress towards that 100K target by the end of the year?
Okay, so we are at high 5 digits. The 100K estimate is based on our sales data for the past 11 months. The detailed financial report I cannot share right now, but we did submit a 1-month report with detailed financial data to Velocity Science earlier this year.
And can you talk to us a little bit more about the business model?
The business model is mostly direct to customer, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You've mentioned about selling the product through e-commerce platforms. How have you leveraged the data to kind of narrow down onto what customer demographic would fit your product the most?
Our customer demographic currently is houseplant enthusiasts, mostly female in their 20s and 30s. However, we are also looking into the application in indoor food production. And our initial experiment at Velocity Science Lab has shown promising results. That would open doors to a whole new demographic for us.
I think that's all of our questions. Great pitch.
Thank you.
Our final team in this year's Velocity Pitch competition helps kindergarten to grade 12 educators create gamified content in 30 seconds or less. Here is Asid, led by Pashan Sidwa, an undergraduate in mechanical engineering who is also in Velocity Digital and Cornerstone.
Thank you, Tina. So, imagine in a classroom where 2 out of 3 students are simply left behind. This is not because they can't learn. It's simply because teaching methods just don't click with them personally. And this is something that 70% of students today face in the classroom. What does this lead to? It leads to them wasting time outside of their classroom, finding content that engages with them. And this is because each student is unique and everyone learns differently. Along with this, fueled by the recent pandemic, the digital divide in education actually leaves schools behind as well. And this fuels the student engagement problem. What are we doing at Asid? We're actually giving you an AI study buddy called Quizzy, and this helps you generate flashcards in less than 30 seconds on any topic possible. Simply type in a prompt into our chatbot, and it gives you flashcards in less than 30 seconds. The best part about this, we support over 95 different languages. So this is not a problem faced here, it's all around the world. And along with this, we're giving you access to a UGC library. That stands for user-generated content. With this user-generated content library, students are able to share content with one another, helping them learn even more. And these flashcards, they're all storable. You can store them, customize them, and create your own. We're trying to take out the hard work from creating these flashcards. So this is a lovely picture that we took about 2 months ago in Toronto. It's a kids coding academy where these kids, ages 7 to 9, are actually learning HTML code for the first time, and they're using Quizzy to do that. Why is this so important? It's called active recall. Active recall helps students to actually learn visually and recollect stuff in the moment. And you can track this progress all throughout Quizzy. And this is shown 150% increased retention rates among these students as well, in comparison to just passively learning. So why would you choose Asid? It's because we're creating a network effect. We want educators to join the platform, sign up, get access to this engaging content, and then share it with their students, all through the platform as well. Along with this, on the Quizzy side of things, we're working with educators to make it as specific to their classroom as possible. They can give us curriculum-based data that we can then feed into our model and then create these flashcards based on what they're teaching in real time. So for our market, the edtech market is ever growing, and it's reaching $218 billion by 2027 alone. And out of this, we want to hit a big market share, which is 2.7 billion Canadian dollars in the North American region. We're focusing on those K-12 sector students, as well as educators. Now, these students obviously go from 5 years old all the way to high school. Why are we targeting this range? It's because we have a large context base that helps break down a simple topic for younger students, as well as a more difficult topic for older students as well. For attraction gain, we've got 4.8 stars with 1,000 plus users on version 1. We've got 400 plus students and 100 teachers interested on version 2. And now we're gearing towards an ISL launch this month. We're also helping to get kids with learning disabilities onto the platform as well. For our business model, we have a free model, a pro model, and then an educator model as well. And we are a subscription-based business. To touch briefly upon the team, I'm one of the co-founders, followed by Jay Mansukani, and a UFT student, Alex Yoshino, who is now our CTO. Thank you so much for listening to my pitch, and feel free to head over to our website to learn more.
So student engagement within classrooms, I think, has been a very big problem, particularly over the last few years with COVID. How would you say your solution is better than others that are out there right now, or others who are competing in the space?
So obviously, we recognize that there is a bit of competition in this space. The edtech market is a very cutthroat market, in all honesty. And I think coming out of the pandemic, me personally, as well as our co-founder, we face these problems firsthand. And now the current education system, as well as the current solutions, don't make it personalized. That's the one key aspect that they're all missing. Or the fact that everyone has to put in the greasework and actually make those flashcards. We're trying to take away all the work that goes into that. We simply type in a prompt to Quizzy, for example, and it gives you flashcards in 30 seconds or less. The whole aspect of this is to make it as specific as possible. You can specify your age, how many flashcards you want, the language you want it in, and it'll give it back to you. And the thing is, after the pandemic, we've seen a lot of educational institutions overall struggle with actually competing with other educational institutions in terms of their digital needs. A lot of education systems have actually pursued digital aspects, especially with online learning. Students like this, when they use Quizzy, they can do it anywhere at home, on the go. Parents can also do it. So that's what keeps us away from the competition.
Thank you.
I think you mentioned that there's existing users that have already used the platform. Can you speak a bit about the retention rate and also how much of those users switch from a freemium model to a paid model?
Yeah, definitely. So We've actually been able to work on 2 versions. The first version having these 1,000+ users, and they were a mix of almost like older students as well as younger kids, as well as getting parents involved. Whereas switching people from the free version to the pro version, that's something we've been working on, obviously, once the app is launched in the iOS store next week. But currently, we have 2 paying consumers on this pro model. And what we've noticed is actually that a lot of students keep coming back to the application. The cool thing about this is because of that ability to actually store flashcards that are generated for you, that's why people actually come back. The other solutions on the market often involve you to go in and type in these flashcards, which, to be honest, for me, deters me away from those platforms. So that's one of the things that makes us unique and why people keep on coming back and actually using this platform.
I was just wondering how you gather feedback from your users and which improvements are you currently making based on advice that, or kind of, which improvements are you trying to make since receiving kind of feedback from early user interviews?
So obviously feedback streams, you've got 2 of them since we're targeting both educators and children. Obviously children is actually sitting down in a classroom like we did with Kids Coding Academy in Toronto, actually getting their feedback to see visually how they're learning and how they're interacting with the platform. That's why we have now tactile buttons inside to say like they liked a question, they got it right or wrong, and then obviously see metrics at the end. These metrics can then be translated onto the educator side where they can see live how the kids are interacting with flashcards, how well they're doing, as well as help educators to actually, personalize those flashcards. For the feedback on the educator side, in fact, we can sit down with them and take their curriculum-based data to tailor it into in-classroom needs as well. So those are the 2 feedbacks that we've gotten. Now we're also working with parents to see what else they would like. Because flashcards like these, they obviously help students with learning disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD. They learn with this much better because they can interact with the flashcard. So those are some of the feedback that we've gotten so far and how we're taking steps to actually address all of this. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the teams for pitching here today. That's a wrap for the fall 2023 Velocity Pitch Competition Finals. Before our judges have the difficult task of picking 4 winners, we'd like to invite you to vote for your favorite pitch today using the QR code on the screen. All right, so while you're doing that, I'm going to welcome our Q&A panelists. So please welcome to the stage Mozam Khan, the Director of Velocity Health, who will be moderating a discussion with Yusuf Helwa, CEO and co-founder of Fluid AI. Yusuf Helwa, a Faculty of Engineering graduate, co-founded Fluid AI in 2014 with fellow alumnus Amr Abdelgawad, Bachelor of Science and Masters of Business Entrepreneurship and Technology. Most recently, Fluid AI's mission to prevent post-operative complications has advanced with the company's $15 million Series A funding. Fluid AI was based out of Velocity for 6 years, where the company had space and resources to grow from a budding idea to a flourishing startup. Its first commercially available product, the StreamTM platform, a continuous, non-invasive, post-operative monitoring system, was launched in August in Canada and Saudi Arabia. Welcome.
Thank you, Yusuf, for joining us here today.
Thank you, Mozam, for holding me. It's always amazing to be back.
So, I mean, you've been a part of like the Velocity ecosystem, Waterloo ecosystem for almost more than a decade now, right? And you've been through and you've seen a lot of the Velocity, pitch competitions. So I just want to start off before we dive into Fluid. What's the difference do you see from like 10 years ago till now regarding the pitches?
It's always interesting to see the evolving nature of tech and the evolving nature of what is currently trending. So I remember when we used to be in Velocity, there was a big hype around robotics. There was a big hype around 3D printing. There used to be more technologies associated with automation of certain tasks. And over time, over different periods, it was always interesting to see how different trends influence different companies, and how we consider the impact of these on the larger ecosystem, and how these students think about the utility of their knowledge, their expertise on building companies, and what problems they're going to address.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen, at least when we pitched at the VFFs, I don't, in 2016 or before that as well, I don't think we've ever seen companies pitch as student teams where they're like, we have this much of revenue. So that's like, you know, a huge round of applause for all the companies that already have revenues as
True.
students. Major accomplishment.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Especially for you, coming from the medtech industry where it took you 10
it
years
took
to
us-
recognize revenue.
Yeah, it took us, what was it, 9 years for us to see our first revenue. It takes time to build revenue in a regulated, controlled environment. So it's always interesting to see the degrees of separation between the company being built and it reaching market. So between software and hardware, there's always a degree of separation. So hardware takes a little longer than software. And then for regulated hardware, so those that exist in the aero industry or the medical industry or other regulated industries, it's always even longer than other pieces of software and pieces of technology. So the journey it takes to arrive to revenue is always longer. It's always interesting as well to see how it develops.
So I'm gonna, before we start and we dive into fluid and before that nerve, right?
Yes.
So that's also an interesting
Yes.
story in the pivot. I really want to go into that as well.
Yeah.
In true entrepreneurship fashion, quick elevator pitch about fluid.
Quick elevator. Okay, so as a company, Fluid AI is focused on providing healthcare providers with early warning systems for complications to be able to detect, monitor patient recovery, and to be able to predict patients' risk for developing a range of different complications. Our focus is on general and GI surgeries, so complications associated with patients going through different oncological procedures, trauma cases, weight loss are all areas of interest for us. And what we do is we have our own hardware that monitors patients coupled with our risk modeling software, AI, that enables us to provide patients and healthcare providers with the comfort of knowing that they're being constantly cared for and we're constantly monitoring them and the risk for developing complications.
Wow. So let's go back to 2014, right? So you and Amr, I remember, started off with, you know, this amazing idea of basically implanting a chip inside the human body.
Correct.
And that's where nerve came from.
Correct.
Do you want to kind of tell us about like how you came about that problem and what really motivated you to solve that problem with that technology?
Ooh, 2014. Okay, so let's go back to 2014. So my background being in nanotechnology engineering, I had aspirations of how the innovations, how the field of nanotechnology could be utilized from a technical sense to address user needs. I mean, the evolution of nanotech from the technical sense of building sensors, building solutions that could be developed in a very small form factor, that they could be with the patient wherever they are, was interesting for me. And I come from a medical background, so both my parents are physicians, my mother is a practicing surgeon, so I have deep knowledge of the field of surgery, how the field of surgery is developing, and I understand the nature of the challenges there. Stemming from that, the idea was, if we were to monitor patients, if we wanted to get information about patient recovery, what is the most dense source of information that could exist, that could be utilized to be able to understand patient recovery? And our thought back then was, let's use the inside of the body. This is where we could house, this is where the most inaccessible source of information is. And if we're able to utilize that, if we're able to capture that, and we're close to where the patient is, we're close to where the complications are developing, then that would be our first source of alert for complications developing. That was the theory. And as we developed the solution, as we understood the different landscapes from regulatory, from financial, from human factors, from the development timelines associated with developing such a solution, we pivoted. It's funny, so the technical requirements from an engineering perspective for our sensory, for our hardware, for our implant, still translated to our external ex vivo solution. Yet the, the versatility, the power, the complexity of it, from it being an implant, still translated into the final product. But yeah, the thought process was, let's deploy a solution that is as close as possible to the body, where we have the most dense source of information possible, and use that as the center of information, and over time we've adapted.
So is it safe to say, because I'm gonna share an incident
Of
from
course,
from like 2015, 2016. I remember Velocity Science, we were both there.
Yes.
And you came in to one of the round meetings, and you're like, we were going over how much money we made. I think the session was around timelines, and I think it was either you or Amr that presented, like, we need $80 million to commercialize our chip that we're gonna put inside the body. And you were really excited that day. I distinctly remember, because you just came back from St. Mike's Hospital. This was 2015, and now recently I read that you've been doing clinical trials with St. Mike's after all these years. So
Correct.
How critical was it for you to get in front of the people that would essentially be using your technology at that stage?
The user, yeah. So user testing and getting feedback from the user has been a crucial part of this transformation. To understand the user needs, to understand what the user wants, to understand how we're supposed to adapt to the solution, to the user need, is part of this evolution. So if we look at the implant solution, from an engineering perspective, our take was we needed an implant solution. That is the only pathway forward. As we began using...
Just to be clear, that was the engineering standpoint.
That was the engineering standpoint. As we started to do user testing, as we moved into this animal studies phase in our evolution, we came in with an implant that was deployed in animal studies. We did do animal studies with an implant. And as we were doing these studies, we were getting feedback from the user. Is there a way to extract this information from an implant into an external solution? And how this was to be done was actually direct feedback from the user. So the user helped guide the product evolution from the implant to the smart catheter, all the way to the completely outpatient solution that we ended up commercializing, and it's currently on the market. The critical piece of interaction here comes by getting the solution into the hand of the user in the quickest form possible. For a regulated industry such as the medical industry, it takes time. You need a quality system in place. You need approvals. You need IRB. You need a lot to be done.
Basically, everything that's really fun.
Everything that's fun, yeah. So a lot of different regulatory steps that need to be taken for you to get to that very first step of user testing. For other industries, for other markets, the sooner you're able to get this feedback, the sooner you're able to adapt, the sooner you're able to achieve the product market fit that is required for you to have a solution that is scalable, a solution where you're able to generate, revenue and profit and build a company.
So just going back to that initial pivot and the importance of user testing at the early stages, and how that kind of directed you into, and the change from like nerve to fluid AI, right? Can you kind of highlight, so you have the aspect of, look, you're putting this in the hands of surgeons, you're asking them feedback of how they're going to be using this, right? But then there's the financial aspect of who's going to be paying for this, right? And how you're going to price this, and how you're going to figure out, how we're going to be selling our solution. Can you kind of elaborate based on that? So you've done the engineering side, you've done kind of the user testing side, you pivoted, and now you have to figure out how you're going to make money off this.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of moving pieces here. On the pricing side, it's one of the primary pillars of marketing. It's one of the 4 Ps that the marketing team has to work through. And in the medical industry, there are different ways to build pricing, and there are external factors that in place, such as reimbursement and the different reimbursement and payment infrastructures that exist within different ecosystems. And to a certain degree, with every single region where we get to launch, we rediscover and we rebuild our understanding of how our commercial and how pricing is going to play into the commercial strategy. But there are 3 or 4 general tactics that we've used in pricing our solution. First is the value game. So based on a hospital economic value model, how much money am I able to save or generate to my user by utilizing my piece of technology or my solution? So there's that. The second is competitive or the general infrastructure. So how are other solutions being priced? How does the ecosystem look like? Because ultimately you want to build a solution from a pricing perspective that competes with the general ecosystem. And then the third is how much reimbursement exists, how much money is there in this domain, how much are people being paid in general, and the fourth is a margins play. So if I was to price my device at $100, how much margin am I making compared to my cost of development? All of these play together into a mix of conversations and analysis, and you come up with a pricing model, pricing strategy that makes sense. And as you deploy it to the market, your pricing constantly evolves and your understanding of the market conditions evolve. So it's not there's no final set answer. There's no one solution that fits all there. There are a number of different ways to come up with a solution. The key thing to consider here is come up with a solution, launch it, test it out, and it will evolve with you over time.
Let's kind of switch gears and let's talk about team.
Yes.
Right. So you have this amazing team, especially your advisory board. That's kind of all these global surgeons that you've brought on board, right? And I would assume that over time your advisory board has kind of evolved as well. Right?
Correct.
What do you look for in an advisor, and what is one feedback that you would give to like the young entrepreneurs here, the early stage entrepreneurs, when they're looking for advisors, or some of the mistakes you've made in the past as well?
So I have a lot of feedback on advisors and
Go
choosing the right advisor for you and for your industry. First of all, the closer the advisor is to the work that you're doing, the closer the advisor is to your field, the more information and the more guidance you're able to get from them. To the other end of the spectrum, I would argue that a good advisor in a specific field, if he's providing advice in a field that he has very little understanding or very little knowledge in, could misguide the company. So I remember in our early days, we would get great advice from software companies or individuals that have led software companies or have worked in the software industry. And a lot of the pieces of advice that they're providing are misguided. They would actually, if we were to follow them or if we were to take them and act on them, they would have had detrimental impact on the company and our timelines and our chances of success. This is why I find it very important to find the right person and the right person at the right time for the company. To use a sporting analogy here, if I am a tennis player and I go to a soccer coach and I ask him for guidance, I am more likely than not to get the wrong advice. To even deepen this analogy, if I am a striker as a soccer player and I go to a goalkeeping coach and I tell him, hey, you've been an amazing goalkeeper, help me become a good striker. He'll provide good advice, but if I could sit with a good, great striker, and it'll get even better advice. And that translates across the industry. The second element to this is timing. So as we were in the field of technical development, we've had great advice from great people, great technical advisors. And then the company evolves and it goes into the validation phase. And the information and the ability of a technical advisor to be adaptable, to be a clinical advisor, is not a mandate. Some people are great at what they do and are great at a certain time. Similarly as well, we've seen this constantly. Someone who knows and understands the clinical or the scientific or the academic point of view could find it very hard to move to the commercial side of view or the commercial endpoints for companies. So the two takeaways here is find someone who you could relate to, who is close to your field, who understands your domain very well. And the second aspect is find someone who understands the timing or understands the position that you're in. On the timing, a great analogy here that I've heard is if you're looking to, for these students, if you're looking to join university or you're looking for advice on university, you will not go to your grandfather who has went through university 50 years ago. You'll find someone who maybe is still in school or had just graduated school to provide you with the best piece of advice. The larger this degree of separation, the less impactful and the less applicable the advice is.
Is it because we hear this a lot from companies and early stage entrepreneurs at Velocity? It's like we're bringing on all these advisors and they are asking for X% of equity, right? What is your kind of feedback or what's your perception on early stage entrepreneurs giving equity to advisors at the early stages?
Good. It's a good question. So, first of all, great advisors could transform companies. They could take companies from A to B in a much shorter timeline, in an accelerated pace. They could help entrepreneurs avoid a lot of the mistakes that if they just experiment, they will do or they were bound to do. So in that sense, an advisor helping you move from A to B in that sense in an accelerated phase and who wants to have skin in the game and who wants to be invested in your success, for them to take shares or to own parts of the company only makes sense, and it will only help the company grow. On the other end of the spectrum, you can't do that a lot and you have to choose your advisor. And I would also be slightly worried if an advisor has a lot of shares or is asking for a lot of shares from a lot of companies. That would be a red flag for me. An advisor should be there for specific companies, especially if he's asking for shares. He should be there for a very set, in a way, very limited amount of companies. He should be there supporting them. He should be there to enable their success. And from the other end of entrepreneurs need to know that they are able to work with this advisor, that he fits their need. And there are different structures to make sure that that's happening, from vesting structures that should make sense, well, I won't walk through the details here, but just know that there should be some guide rails.
Do you think it's safe to say that there should be a couple of months of vetting period where you're actually seeing what value the advisor can give to you, what doors that advisor can open up for you before you actually think of providing with a small amount of equity and onboarding them?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then the other facet of teams, right? There's, let's talk about co-founders. Right, so
he's here. I don't see him,
right
but
now,
he's here.
So yeah, how important are co-founders versus single founders, right? And how do you actually select or find your co-founders?
Great question. So I've been blessed with a great team.
I know you have.
Yeah, with a great team of co-founders and a great team of individuals. I know you know this. We were known as the three of us would always show up at different events, different conferences, and we all functioned as a team. And to a certain degree, everyone fulfilled a certain part, and they've helped fill certain gaps. So until today, it's still the case. Even as our team continues to grow and as we cross 50 individuals, the ability of my co-founders, the ability of my team to function in different capacities and support each other has been incredible. And the ability to have different points of view on the table, the ability to develop and work hard, the ability to support each other when times are tough or when there are, challenges, whether business, whether personal, whether life happens, and the ability to be there has been incredible when you have a team that's there, that's supporting you, that's helped build an incredible culture. The success that we've been able to achieve, I wouldn't have been able to achieve myself. Far from it. So I credit a lot of our success to my team members, to my co-founders, to everyone who's helped us succeed and come to the place we're in today, including, by the way, our advisors and the ecosystem with Velocity and the university and other partners as well.
Thank you for that. So let's talk about something. So Fluent's now raised a $15 million Series A round, right? Which is amazing, by the way. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Right, and especially in a difficult market like today's, and raising the amount of capital for a highly regulated product in a highly regulated industry, right? Let's go back a couple of years when you were doing your pre-seed round.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Can you roughly tell me how many investors you spoke to before you got your first check?
First check. Okay, so
first significant check.
First significant check. So first significant check took us 5 years. So it took us quite a bit of time. I wouldn't say we were fundraising or had around. To a certain degree, we were learning as we were going. The first real check came in 2018. And it came around the time when we had an MVP, when we had a prototype. And I would argue the moment that you have an MVP, the moment you have a prototype that you're able to test, and at the time we were going for our animal studies, our animal testing, people could start to see the vision. People could start to trust that this team could execute. People could start to see how the solution is going to be implemented, or how it's going to develop into a real solution or to a real product. We come from, ultimately, we are a deep tech startup. It's a deep tech solution. So it takes time in the technical foundation of the company, all the way till you have a product that then you're able to test or later validate. From there, the fundraising of our pre-seed round was a very tedious, very hard process. The majority of our investors were ultimately doctors and surgeons and users, which helped provide validation for further rounds. And a lot of this validation and a lot of this fundraising effort stemmed from our ability to showcase what we were able to achieve to date, how we're going to achieve the next coming steps, and by showcasing how the proceeds, how the pre-seed round is going to help us go from one stage to the next. So if I recall, our pre-seed round was $750,000, and then our seed was 2.7 million, and then our Series A was closer to 15.
Got it. And I know you primarily raised your pre-seed and seed from physicians that kind of contributed again, but then you also, there's investors that came from globally.
Correct.
Right? What percent of significant, like if I were to take Fluid AI's total funding and rough on top of your head, how much percent came from actually Canada versus outside of Canada? There's a reason why I'm asking this question.
Canada would account for, I would say,
dilutive funding, not dilutive funding.
Yeah, dilutive funding. Probably somewhere in the 50 to 60%. Then US and international would be 40 to 50%, somewhere in that range.
And your lead investor?
Lead investors were all US.
Do you think if that's kind of a gap that we have in the Canadian market right now, is that we don't have enough lead investors when it comes to deep tech and med tech companies?
Yeah, there are. I could count them. I could tell you who they are. And the fact that I could count them on one hand tells you we have a very weak ecosystem. It's unfortunate. It's factual, We have a weak ecosystem here that is developing, and we hope that it continues to develop. But you need to leave. You need to move around and go global and spend some time in the States and in other jurisdictions and in other regions. One, if you want to be successful and understand other markets, and two, if you want to fundraise.
So this is kind of interesting, right? Now you're doing your manufacturing here in Kitchener.
Correct.
At the Medical Innovation Exchange.
Correct.
Right, and you're shipping product to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Right, and I think it's just been 2 months since you've been doing that now, like shipping, or?
Yeah, well, 1 quarter, let's say.
1 quarter,
Yeah.
okay. How's been that experience? What are some new learnings that you've kind of transcended on since then?
Yeah, well, so many learnings, so there are a lot, but I'll choose a few to highlight. One is different markets provide you with completely different perspectives. So a success, or rather a failure in one market, does not necessitate success or failure in another market. It's important to choose which markets you're going to launch into, or which markets you're going to choose as part of your early market launch. And this involves analysis on a number of different variables. So for us, it stemmed from components related to the regulatory reimbursement landscape, components related to our connections, our ability to launch, components related to how big the market is, the larger market opportunity, and other factors play into this decision and the ability of companies to choose which markets are going to make the most sense for their solution. So there's an analysis component that has to be done and has to be conducted. The second piece of the analysis is you have to make choices. So you cannot launch everywhere at once. You cannot do 50 different markets in one go. You have to choose which markets are going to make the most sense for you. And for us, in the current stage that we're in this early commercialization component, we've chosen Saudi and we've chosen Canada based on our analysis for this different market. Canada being our local market, the market we understand, the market where we've developed our technology, and Saudi being a market that has shown a lot of promise for our solution and a lot of promise for our ability to commercialize and build good markets and solve a big problem there.
Before we go to some questions with the audience, right? What's the future for Fluid AI?
Great question. So we've branded and we've built our focus around data-driven based patient recovery. We see the future of healthcare, the future of clinical prognosis to be fully revolving around our ability to understand the patient condition, our ability to analyze the different risk factors associated with patients, and our ability to collect and gather information about the patient recovery process and how this could be utilized, condensed, and analyzed so we're able to provide patients with the best care possible. By understanding or by accepting that this is the future of care and this is how patients are going to recover, our take on it is we're going to build a solution that sits and moves with the patient wherever they're recovering. We're collecting information day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute about how the patient recovery is evolving and how their condition is evolving over time. We're analyzing all of the different patients' risk factors, and we're doing that and we summarize that into one reading, one simple reading that is being constantly updated around how the patient condition is evolving over time. And we're doing that today with general and GI surgeries in the world's best institutions. Today we're in Cleveland Clinic. We've partnered with Mayo Clinic. We're in we're going to be at UHN. We're at Unity Health. We're at HHS. We're in some of the biggest and best clinical institutions on the planet, and we're continuing to add to this list. We're partnered up with large companies, so we're JLabs companies. We've had the partnership with Medtronic, so we're partnered up with the right players in the ecosystem as well.
These partnerships are mostly like channel strategies that you're utilizing in order to get to more customers, correct?
well, yeah, and there are co-development opportunities as well that are currently ongoing with someone like Medtronic. We're developing collaborative solutions together. Our play and our tactic here is to make sure that we're in the world's best and biggest institutions, that we are developing the strongest ecosystem around us with the best companies and the largest company in the space, and we're continuing to build the best models for our healthcare providers. And from there, our hope is to expand from general and GI surgery and the indications that we're in to cover more indications and to cover more complications and to cover more surgeries. And that is the future that we want to enable, the future of data-driven patient care.
So essentially developing a whole platform.
Yes, and what we've developed is Stream platform.
Got it. I know we're out of time, but we can take one question from the audience, I guess. If there's any question. There's one question way in the back.
Nice to meet you, Oliver. Yeah, good question. So a couple of things in the DNA of building our company. So the first is when we've built our company, and as we continue to develop our company, one key piece of our evolution is that we are not a sensors company. So sensors is part of our solution. It's a key component of our solution. It falls directly into the domains and the backgrounds of the founders and the early team members of the company. But that was only a piece of the larger vision that we were trying to enable. Sensors are, to us, a data source about patient recovery. We would never have set, or we did not set on this journey with the idea or the endpoint being I am building a sensor or I am an OEM manufacturer for sensors that could be deployed or used in other solutions. The key idea that we went after is we want to enable data-driven care. Sensors is a source of information that could be utilized to understand patient condition. And from there, we've made the decision and strategically over time as the company continued to evolve that sensors being a critical part of our solution is just a component of the larger ecosystem that we're looking to build.
Perfect. Yusuf, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you having here today. And then just for everyone as well, Yusuf's been a mentor for a number of health companies and tech companies and at Velocity. So if you're in the health tech field looking to develop the next, breaking through, Yusuf and Amar are always here to, help out.
Of course, happy to help. It'll be a pleasure.
Thank you, Mozam and Yusuf. Before we officially announce our winners, I would like to call up our judges to say a few words about the teams who pitched here today.
Thank you, and great job to all the presenters today. It's not easy to come up and try to present your company in 3 minutes or less. I was a presenter at some point in some of these competitions, and I know how challenging it is. You try to cover 8, 9 different aspects of your business in a very short period of time, and it gets very, very challenging. I know we're going to announce 4 winners today, but for the other companies that were not selected as winners, it does not mean that your business is not a successful idea or the concept is not a successful one. Sometimes in these situations, it gets very, very challenging, and it comes down to very, very minor points. And we do have feedback in general for all of the companies that presented today. One piece of feedback that came up during deliberation is the importance of having a strong team that surrounds this idea. It could be one of the reasons that could make or break a business, and making sure that you're building a very strong team from the beginning with complementary skill sets is something that every single team should be thinking about and should be thinking about at this stage. Building relationships with your co-founders, with your early employees, with your team is essential to ensure the success of the business. These are people that you're going to be spending a lot of time with, people that you're going to be spending time with more than your families or your significant others. So make sure that you're building a very strong relationship with them from the get-go. And once again, another piece of feedback that came up during deliberation is the importance of making sure that you really hone in down on your competitive advantage and who are the other players in the market. I think this is extremely important, especially as you start to scale and as you present to more investors. They will dig deep on this particular point, trying to nail the value proposition, trying to nail the competitive edge. These are areas that a lot of investors tend to focus on, especially as we start to grow in a much bigger tech market and more competitors or companies are coming into play in your space. So keep that in mind. Not sure if there's anything else that I missed or that you want to cover, but that was these were 2 of the most important points that we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you again to our judges. All right, so now it's the moment we've all been waiting for. The judges have picked 4 winners for this term's Velocity Pitch Competition Finals. We're going to start by announcing our People's Choice Award recipient of $500. If your name is called, please come up and get a photo, and then we will move on to taking photos and announcing the top 4 teams. So please help me congratulate our People's Choice recipient of $500, Plantel. Congratulations. Okay, next up, each of our top 4 teams will be winning a grant of $5,000. Our first team is Mapmate. Congratulations. Our next recipient is Blackbird. I would like to welcome Plantel back to the stage. Congratulations. And our final recipient of $5,000 is Plantel Support. I would like to ask all winners to please stick around for some photos. But congratulations to all of the finalists here today for sharing the stage and your ideas with us. Thank you to our judges, our volunteers, and the team who helped put this together. And thank you, of course, to our audience. Stay up to date on all things Velocity by joining our LinkedIn @UW Velocity and newsletter. Thank you.